Welcome to Pulling Back the Curtain, number 16. So excited. I just told Melissa I've been looking forward to this, having her on for some time. This is Melissa Murphy with Prime Real Estate and a whole bunch of other stuff, but most notably Prime Real Estate Group. I'd love to. You're someone who obviously has become a friend, which is wonderful, but just so interesting. So I look forward to getting into a bunch of stuff today. But for those who may not know you, let's just start with your background, just briefly where you grew up, what made you tick from a young age, and then we'll get into how you got to where you're at today.
I love it. Well, I'm honored to be on the podcast. I've listened to almost every one of yours. You've had such great content and a lot of great information. So I'm honored to be here. Thank you. Yeah. So going way back, I always, not too far back, but it is kind of far back. My grandfather was the son of a miner and had 4 boys. And so my grandfather, out of those 4 boys, 3 of them became doctors. Pretty motivated coming from that circumstance. Yeah. And so that's kind of the backbone of our family. Yeah. It's always been excellence in work and education and drive and motivation. And the predominant group of our family was in the medical field. Mm-hmm. And so that was the family I grew up in. And my dad was an incredibly hard worker, out the door usually early in the morning, home for dinner, then back to the hospital after that. So that was exemplified for me. And, you look at most of our family and it's MD, PhD, or JD. There's that excellence in that specialized education that has always been critically important. Mm-hmm. So from an early age, that work ethic has always been instilled in me. And my path kind of veered a little bit, and it was actually during college, I thought I was going to go the law school route. And I was introduced to a book by a mentor, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Mm-hmm. And I endearingly told my parents that if it hadn't been for that book, I would have gone to law school. And instead...
You owe that book a lot then.
Yes.
Having gone to law school.
Yes, yes.
It's not a picnic.
Right. So inadvertently, after reading that book, I started buying real estate. And so I bought my first property at 22. I then quickly bought my first house. I did a live-in flip. I then bought another condo. And then I thought, I'm really enjoying this. And so I went and got my real estate license and told my parents I wasn't going to go to law school, but I was going to go get my MBA.
So this is right out of college then?
Yep.
You jump right in.
Well, I actually worked in politics, so that was my segue.
I do remember that now. Mm-hmm. That's going back.
Yep. So that goes way back.
Not to age us too much, but you and I are about the same age. That is going work. It's getting up there now.
Right.
All right.
So I actually worked in Washington, D.C. Then I worked in Olympia. And then I worked here for the city of Spokane. I was in the mayor's office. Yeah. And coincidentally, the city attorney's office is right across the hall. And so I'd always go over and I'd see the attorneys sitting in their cubicle with their highlighters, highlighting briefs, and it didn't look like what was on TV.
Just reinforced your decision.
Oh, it wasn't the Ally McBeals and the nice suits in the courtroom. And so it kind of helped steer me in a different direction. So incidentally, when I told my parents I was going to become a real estate agent, they said, "Oh, please do something respectable and go to law school." And we know how many attorney jokes there are, but I know they're very proud today. So I had a full course load at Gonzaga doing my MBA program and got my real estate license in the same week. And I sold 12 homes that first 4 months while being on campus 5 days a week. So I very quickly found my passion. And before I knew it, it was 2008, which was my 3rd year in the business. I was ranked the number 2 agent for sales sides out of the entire MLS and number 5 in volume. So not bad after 3 years. And it caught a lot of people's attention. Yeah. And I guess I was surprised that wasn't what everybody did. Again, it was I took the same work ethic that I saw from my family of this is just what you do and applied it to real estate, and the results were shocking.
So let me stop you there because there's 2 things I'd like to dig a little bit deeper on. So you talked about your family legacy. Mm-hmm. Was it discussed? Because one of the cliches, unfair in my experience, although there's certainly examples of it, cliches are cliche for a reason, is, that of hey, 2-3 generations in, things tend to reset. The kids are lazy. So was this just something you saw modeled and wanted to live up to? Was it discussed? Were there certain things? I'm asking now as a father of girls who want them to have the same work ethic. And so how did that, what all went on to help that get ingrained in you?
That's a great question. And I don't think I have the perfect answer because my family has always said I have 2 speeds. I'm on or off. Yeah. And so I drive hard all the time.
Some of it was just DNA.
I think there's a part of it that's DNA, that it's just innate. And, my mom used to always say, I always asked why. She said she'd limit me to 5 questions a day because it was why, I want to know. And my sister excels in everything she does as well. So I think it was just ingrained in us, but I also think there's also DNA and always seeking a better way, always looking to pull something apart and go, could I do it better? Could I do it faster? Could I be more efficient and produce a greater result?
So with that then leads me to my second question, and in all sincerity, obviously a capable person, gifted with talents as well, and work to utilize those. But for those people, whether they think they're gifted, and everybody of course has their own gift, but maybe some of that doesn't come as innately to them.
Right.
So here you are, it's 2005, still relatively new, getting into the business, and in a 3-year time frame, you jump to the top of the pack.
Right.
Now, whether someone's goal is to be the top or just be able to make a career, what were some of the things you did to start to move forward? Because I think for a lot of people, it's day one, you're on the scene, and you're like, what do I do? I know that was me. If I may just take an extra moment here, I think this is a big issue I see. I'm not one of those people who's going to come out and trash out school, but for a lot of people who have excelled in school, it was the teacher made the target, you learn to hit the target. They made the target. Then you get out and you have to make the target yourself and then hit the target and readjust the target and rebuild it and tweak it. So walk me through some of those first days of, you're here, you've got your real estate license, you might have had 1 or 2 properties personally, but now you're going to make a career out of this. What were some of the first things you put into place? Getting into the market in 2005, there was some similarities to what people are saying. The bubble's going to burst. This is unsustainable. So you almost feel like there's a clock ticking. Sure.
I got to get there fast because we don't know how long this is going to last. Yeah. And getting that sense of urgency put me ahead of those who may have had felt that things were getting easy, where I felt like the clock was ticking, that we never knew when that shoe was going to drop. And of course it was, end of 2007, 2008, where we started to see things change. And because I always had that urgency and that need to be incredibly efficient because we never know how long it's going to last, that set me up with a work ethic that actually some of my best years were when the market changed. And so for me, it was understanding that whether the market goes up or goes down, I'm not responsible. I just have to be the one to communicate accordingly. And the challenge was a lot of agents, when the market dropped, didn't know how to communicate that to their clients, which set me apart because, again, your ability to articulate and describe and educate your clients, not convince them of something that isn't in their best interest, but just educate them through the process, was what set me apart from other agents who the level of fear that was so prevalent in the agent community at that time was crazy, because essentially we had 2,600 agents when I got in the market. By 2011, which was the bottom of the market, we had 1,300. So when half of the room leaves the business, you look around and go, wow, what's next? But it actually allows you to really thrive in an environment where that challenge of what next and how to articulate to that clients was really paramount.
So a couple things jump to mind because those are great points. So one is there's actually we're very similar in very similar industries. Lots of parallels, including one. I know I read an interesting white paper where this person went back, and again, I don't recommend this as an investment strategy for either one of our industries, but they basically looked and found a pretty strong correlation to the numbers of day traders to market tops and or real estate agents, right? So the idea is once the money gets easy, everybody piles in.
Yes.
That's pretty close. And then, of course, bottoms out the other side. Whether we're talking about tough markets, because again, this is something that's similar for us. We ebbs and flows, whether it's people's retirement funds or their homes, you're talking about their biggest assets, how they're going to quite literally provide for their families. And thus it's emotional.
Yes.
Right. And I think, and so I'm going to tee this general thing up and then turn it to you, but that does create certainly some challenges, but it creates some tremendous opportunities. And to that last point, I guess, and you can weave this as you want, I think for a lot of people who are scared about the rise of technology, Redfin, any number of online trading mechanisms, I've contended for some time now, if your whole deal was access, I'm the Blockbuster where you can get the video, I'm the only way to get a home, I'm just the gatekeeper to get a stock, a house, a DVD, then Netflix, Redfin, and E-Trade are going to eat your lunch.
Yes.
But if you will embrace that challenge around relationship, being a student of your craft, then there's a tremendous opportunity, because that relationship side, that fear side, that emotion side is always going to be there. That's in all of our DNA.
Right.
But I think for a lot of people that is scary. So I guess there's a lot there, but here you are in 08. That's the market side of things. You tech. Talk about approaching, clearly you have the business in a different way than just being a transaction processor.
There's a couple of things that I'll hit on. Number one is when you're so intimately connected with your clients during a relatively stressful period, whether it's negotiations or move out or how quickly the home sells, or you're talking to your clients 1, 2, 3 times a day during that period. And so what I know is challenging is that sense of almost isolation once your clients, close on their house and then you move to a next client. You almost feel like you want some camaraderie or a group around you. And so when the market changed so dramatically and the negativity amongst agents became so prevalent and the fear set in, what I knew was the environment you surround yourself is so critically important, which is why I branched out. I branched out and started my own firm because you have to have that supportive, collaborative environment. And going back to your point of if access is your only competitive advantage, that's kind of the model that a lot of traditional brokerages have stood on, because that was
a whole bunch of industries, right?
A whole bunch of industries. Yeah. And you go back to brokerages just holding the information. So before the MLS, what did you do if you wanted to go buy a home? You went to the biggest sign in town, drove in, walked in, the salesperson met you, they opened the MLS book. That's evolved so much that we're not so dependent on that brand or that big box. It's more the relationship. It is how they feel, how you walk them through the process, your competitive advantage of finding off-market deals or helping them navigate, and that market expertise that a computer algorithm can't provide. And so when you actually study the real estate market, I'm sure there's some correlation with the financial market as well, like we were talking about with access to information. They say that we're in about a 14-year cycle of major disruption. And that started with the Zillows, the Redfins, the Purple Bricks, those things that are changing the model. We know that we still have a long way to go, and there are big tech innovators who are seeking to disrupt the industry. But again, we know that this is a people business, and you are taking most families' most significant asset and a lot of emotion that's attached. So we expect some disruption in the market, but most would argue that it's going to be in the price point that can be highly commoditized. So that lower price, that easier to quantify versus the more special, unique, mid to high priced assets.
And I don't want to make this about people who have money and people who don't have money, but to your point, we have a lot of people who come in, they say, hey, I have $3,000 and I want to get started, right? Or my grandson has $3,000. And we try to help where we can, but we also try to be honest about where we can actually add value or not add value.
Right.
So for a lot of people, like, hey, this might be a great place where you do just go to Vanguard and put your $3,000 in. And when it gets a little more complicated, when taxes become a factor, when there's a family involved, when there's some job changes, the things that you're going to want to have someone to bounce ideas about, then we're here, right? But we're not going to just take $1 from you today just to take $1 from you. And to your point, and again, I'm not trying to make light of any of these things. We all start from somewhere, but someone wants to just go buy a new track house that's being listed by what they may not need your expertise, right? And then there's other things that, so I think one of the parallels is lots of stocks, lots of mutual funds, lots of houses. You can live in a lot of places that will keep you warm and dry. You could hold a lot of different types of equity mutual funds for 30 years and you'll make money. But part of it is listening and crafting a story to help create those emotional ties so people feel great about their purchase and or have the wherewithal to stick to their financial plan in my world. So talk to me a little bit about, because I've got to believe, and knowing you to the extent I do, I know this is true, the ability, not just from a sales perspective, because yes, it's an effective means to sell, but for the right reasons, of creating a narrative, of listening to your client. They're articulating some things that may not necessarily be around rooms, bedrooms, types of cabinetry, but you're hearing what they're saying. And then this is that value add, right?
Yes.
Finding exactly, hey, this might not have even been exactly where you were going to think or exactly what you thought you wanted, but having listened to, how do you go about that? How do you create those stories?
The best way I describe it is, I always say, again, going back to the technology piece, you can use a computer to generate an algorithm of what a specialized value of your home potentially could be, but you can't read the barometer of the market. And consumer confidence can really affect buyer traffic, seller inventory, in migration to a city, etc. So we're always watching for clues in the area. And so very, very commonly I'll have a conversation with a client and they say, these are my needs. This is what I'm thinking about 1, 2, 3 years down the road. And there will be times where I say, you said 3 years, starting to see some signs. You might want to think about doing this now, or conversely, it was great. I had a client the other day. He kind of shared his overall financial goal and getting into more real estate investing. He says, should I hold this or sell this? And I said, hold it. He says, should I hold this or sell it? He says, hold it. He goes, you're a terrible salesperson. You're not making my, And again, it's seeing that big picture, understanding where they have the strengths and weaknesses, and how we can best fit and adapt to that long term, because these are relationships that you want for life. It's not one transaction or another. And so, we are explaining options and guiding through them, the process, but educating. I
had one thing I try to make a lot of time for younger professionals who come in, and so many people poured into me when I was younger, but they said, what would a couple life lessons? One of the biggest lessons, to your point, is have a long time frame.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And again, I think everybody's guilty of it. You just hope to be better than not, which is, don't take the shortcuts. Right. Especially when it comes to your reputation.
Yes.
And your business ethic, but just in how you think and treat people, not just as a means to an end. Right. Because it will come back around. And it's amazing in life how, I was telling the story about a thing that happened in law school with one of my fellow students, and then years later, yet another random party refers into their friend, and then I sit down with him and he's like, you're that guy that helped my daughter in school, and I didn't do that 20 years ago to get a client today, but it's about, again, treating people the right way. Let me ask you about some of the downsides, I wouldn't say downsides, challenges.
Yeah.
So maybe someone listening wants to be a realtor, maybe they want to be an advisor, professional, whatever. When you're not taking shortcuts, and you're going to invest in time, and you're going to develop relationships, and you're going to craft narratives and all those things that can help you excel and get to the top of your game, it takes a ton of time. And maybe you can't relate. I would say there's probably been a time or two where, unplanned, you realize you're not paying attention to some parts of your own craft, maybe a segment of your client book. Maybe you got moving too fast over here because you didn't have the time you needed because of something you did. how have you had, what are some lessons learned, again, assuming you maybe can relate, and some rebalancing of saying, okay, I got caught on this path, again, subconscious as it often is, I got to stop. You're more successful now. It's not like when you had 5 clients, you have 500 relationships, made up numbers. You got to do business differently.
Right.
So how have you walked through that? What are some lessons you've learned that would be valuable to share? I know that would take like 17 hours, but I need like 2.
Right. Well, this is the hard part, because now I've created this incredible team, and so I look at
that's one of the things you learned.
That is it.
Right?
It is you surround yourself with the right people, and it is incredible what you will accomplish. The challenge, though, is there have been times where the right person wasn't on. We had the wrong person who I thought could have been stronger than they were, and you find that you get a couple complaints, and you have to make a very, very, very tough decision and separate them from your company, because it's your brand, it's your name out there, and those are some really hard days.
Have you ever had any of those personally, where someone had to call you to account and you had to say, you know what, that you're right, I didn't do what I should have done or promised, or I unintentionally, maybe it's just different. How do you, when we all get, again, not always, the other person's not always right, but sometimes they are. How do you, what's your internal process, both in terms of your responses to said person?
Yep.
You can bifurcate it if you want between when you think they're right or not right. But at some point, whether you agree with them or not, you say, I hear you.
Yep.
And then reflect on it, and maybe you make some changes. So walk me through your process around that.
Everyone has their own perspective and a different lens. And so what I usually know as a client or a customer, or even an agent in our office, is sometimes operating off of a different baseline. Fear is very prevalent. And going back to 2008 and the market change, one of the things I did was so careful what I consumed. I switched to podcasts, books, because again, if you're getting that negative news cycle, which so many people just passively consume without thinking about it, and it can affect your decision, and you can be operating or functioning out of fear. So I usually do my best to not take it personally, take a step back and go, what are their challenges? What are their struggles? Because again, it's such an emotional decision that we can't be more emotionally invested in the transaction to make it go through, or vice versa. So again, we're just looking at that perspective and what's really driving them. And it's easier said than done sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to imagine whether it's a client that says, I'm not going to work with you anymore, or an agent that you've invested in that's come in that, I mean, it hurts. It
hurts, and it never gets easier. And I think my expectation is, the longer you are in the business, the thicker your skin. No, it still hurts every time, and you understand, and you look at overall the continued partnerships you have, and are so grateful for those. But again, it's everyone will take their own path, and what I perceive to be the best path for someone may not always be that.
Well, my next section I want to ask you about was balancing, but to that end, I think that's an important. This is something I think about a lot, and agree with you in the sense that it doesn't get easy. And you see some people where it seems to, and I've kind of come to one of two conclusions. Either A, they're faking it,
right,
or B, maybe you can reach a place of cynicism such that, or hardened state that it doesn't bother you anymore. But and there's some things I've gone through in my own life where I realized that what people valued in me was not my ability to, be right all the time or be strong, but to also be vulnerable and authentic and real. And again, that when you're going to be authentic and real, that's going to come with some vulnerability, right? If I stop being the person who cares if a client doesn't want to be my client, or a colleague doesn't want to be my colleague, can't let it devastate me, but I'm probably not in the right heart and mindset to be a leader anymore too. Right. That's kind of how I've thought about it.
Right.
Let's talk about that sense of urgency and fear, because I think this is, in talking to people, and when people come in and they want to ask me questions, and when I try to self-reflect about, like, why aren't some of these things feeling differently? I think it's hard to balance. It's not fear. I wouldn't say it's fear. And yet that sense of urgency does come from a place of knowing you're not entitled to anything.
Right.
And so you're living with this fear that it could all go away. But you have, some control over that, not maybe total control, but some control. So how do you balance through, again, tell me if you don't agree, but for me, it's like, okay, that sense of urgency comes, again, not from a place of fear, but understanding, hey, things can go wrong. Things will go wrong. You need to be ready for that. And yet then approaching that challenge with a fair degree of optimism, which I think for some people strikes them as confusing or counterintuitive, but I believe that to be more true than not.
I study the numbers. I study market cycles. I study, the different fundamentals that we're seeing specifically here in our region that we should be overall optimistic about. I think the challenge is everyone still has that pain of a 08, 09, 2010. And so, the best way I look at it is the last recession was caused by real estate. And it took a beating on home prices, of course.
To all the financial advisors out there now?
It was a rough cycle there.
Yeah.
So the challenge, though, is everyone has that locked in their memory as they hear, potential recession coming, and they think it's going to lead to what we most recently had. Well, the challenge is the fundamentals are so different, but that emotionality, that fear is, I kind of give the example of the hot stove. You put your hand on the hot stove and you go, oh, don't do that again. So you hear recession, and it's kind of that hot stove moment where you go, oh no, we're going to see the same price decline that we saw previously, but the fundamentals are so different. But changing or separating that emotion is really hard.
Yeah. Markets are market. Real estate investment, very similar dynamic, and people are always, again, one of those subconscious bias. It's been written a lot. Recency bias of, hey, it's going to be like it just was, or whatever it has been is going to continue indefinitely. Rarely the case. Usually manifests in a little bit different way. How do you keep your clients, maybe it's those who want to sell and you don't think they should, to your earlier example about holding, or maybe the buyer who's got some trepidation around making such a big investment. How do you walk them through and help them have a longer term perspective?
I think the biggest challenge is their overall intention, is there any ounce of speculation there? If it's anything that could be getting over their ski tips or being too risky, you ask them their why. Is this a long-term move, or are they, riding the wave up while the market's hot? Because again, as we know, you have to be prepared for market adjustments. And specifically when the market's been performing well, you want to make sure you've got your plan A, plan B, and plan C. So it's adjusting to the market very quickly if necessary, but just really watching the fundamentals and making sure your clients understand those as well. For us here in the area, Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, we're very confident with some of the dynamics we're seeing, specifically because what some economists are saying is that mid-sized city is well positioned for strength in the upcoming years as people flee the quality of life, affordability issues you find in these.
Move toward flee the big city, the rat race.
The 2-hour commutes, the high cost of the affordability crisis, and they move to an area where you can buy a home and you don't have to be, in the rat race, as they say.
Yeah. So another thing I want to pick your brain about, I'm basically just using you for my own benefit.
Yeah.
So if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Balance. So you're a wife, you're a mom, you're an agent yourself.
Yep.
You're the owner of a business. You're a professor. I mean,
Yep.
Seems like a little much. But no, how do you, the reality is things have to give.
Yes.
But how do you balance through? What are some of the checks and balances, not just balance, but checks and balances you have to say, okay, because you're never going to find that perfect stride of saying, okay, maybe I need to pull back a little on this or move a little bit more into that. What's your process for that? Because you've got a lot going on.
It's hard because again, you get used to that momentum of what you did to build your business. And so then the minute you that momentum is there, and it's almost second nature. And so you have to consciously catch yourself. So we're really good about
because you and I started our businesses
same time,
the same year, if not the same month. That's a great point. Because then you get going, and I think when you try to slow down at all, even if it is to a more healthy rate, you feel like you're being irresponsible or lazy, which is really an unhealthy mindset.
Yes.
And it's just, again, being a creature of habit. That's a great point.
It's that momentum that you're accustomed to, and so you just have to make sure you're shifting it in a healthy way to something else. So that's exercise, that's routine of some sort that isn't work related. Yeah. So for instance, we are very mindful about, our evening routine and even our morning routine. As a family, what we do, we put our phones down, how we spend time together, and what we do to be together as a family. And it took a while because again, it's 4 or 5 o'clock. I'm at home with my family, and before I would be going to a networking event or dinner with clients or doing additional things that while I'm covering everything critical and important in my business, it's those extra things that you as a business owner are always thinking ahead. You're thinking about your next strategy, your next marketing campaign, your next engagement with your clients, and so it's making sure you're present and in the moment and putting your phone down and being there.
Yeah, no, that's a great. I've actually gone to, in terms of sleep too. I did this about 3 weeks ago. I knew I was going through a bad sleep, where I have embraced the phone's not in my bedroom anymore at night.
Because if you pick it up at 2 a.m,
there's too much of a temptation.
And go.
You can see it, and all those
right.
Admittedly unhealthy. I'll check Instagram or my email or LinkedIn or Bleacher Report or whatever.
Right.
It's on the fan. Yeah, I think you've got to trust. Don't you? What the time you have put in, right? I mean, when you were starting your career, when I was, especially, you having grown up in Spokane, but still going into an industry where your family had never been in it,
right?
Maybe didn't even know why you were going into it, from the sounds of it. Same with I've got some roots here, but nothing in the investment industry. I was the first person to go into that. But you have put in, for both of us, coming up on a couple decades of time where you spend a lot of time and trusting that foundation that you built, trusting the relationships you built, trusting the team that you built, to be able to afford yourself some time to not have to chase everything that you would have once chased, right?
And especially for our industry, because the inventory has been so tight, I find that we have to get out of town once a month. We have to go on that vacation because it'll be too tempting. You get a call from a client and you don't want to let them down. And so you'll jump, and that's normal and natural. But now I'm more strategic about my backup plan of having my team behind me ready to go, so I can take a day or two off and feel okay about it.
Is that how you do it, or do you ever tell clients? I know you must, but it's 4 o'clock, you're planning on being home 5 o'clock, whatever the case may be, and client calls out of the blue and says, I want to go see this right now.
Yep.
How do you draw those boundaries?
It's hard because I don't want to let anybody down. Yeah. And with how hot the market's been, we have to be so.
Out of your house
no.
Yeah.
It is. You do your best, but again, it's hard to let somebody down and tell them no. So that's why we have to be so specific about, sorry, I'm out of town, but I've got somebody to cover you, and they'll be there at 4 o'clock.
Do you try to set expectations up front at all around, hey, this is when I'll be available, this is how it'll, especially if inventory is tight, people maybe fear getting the thing that they're looking at.
Expectations up front are so important about days on market, expectation, how we're going to communicate. If you can't reach me immediately, these are the folks that are available to help. So absolutely. And having, again, that team is so, so critically important.
Yeah. I know here one of our mantras for this year, I would say it was some 180-degree turn, but just a heightened focus was just on intentionality. And so we've been going through a whole new formal document with clients, again, just around expectation setting.
Yep.
I think you can start to live based off the law of averages, as opposed to, again, one of those things, if you don't want to be viewed as a commodity, you can't give a commoditized type service model of, of really, okay, what works for you? This is what will work for me, what will work for you. We're in agreement. And then living up to that. I mean, I've had, not to throw any of my colleagues under the bus, both people internal and external say, what if we do this and then we don't live up to it? Like, that's the challenge and the opportunity.
It is
right?
the opportunity.
You're right.
For sure.
If we say we're going to do something and we don't do it, we're going to look really bad.
Yep.
Conversely, if we say we're going to do something in a world that so often doesn't follow through, and we follow through, we're going to be rock stars.
That's exactly right.
Right? And people aren't just going to be clients, they're going to become fans, and that's how we're going to grow our business and do it in the right way.
Exactly.
I want to get to some personal development stuff.
Okay.
I think we've touched on this a little bit, but I do want to hit on leadership.
Okay.
Again, similarities between you and I. We'll have to do this again soon. I have my own client set, and yet, as you have your own clients, and yet we also have an obligation to pour into, develop, support our colleagues. So how do you motivate, support,
right,
draw those lines? Because there are times where we can get going. You and I would have, eventually got where we're going by focusing on developing and working hard, and it can get a little bit myopic, and then all of a sudden there's all these great things the team can do for us, but as a leader, and I know we both have that servant leader type mentality of saying, okay, I need to make sure that I'm giving you twice as much as I'm asking.
Absolutely.
So how do you find that balance, and what kinds of things do you do to motivate your team? You do actually a lot of stuff. You guys play games.
We do. We have a fun group. I mean,
you hand out cash.
Yeah, I do Jeopardy games. I give money away. Yeah. And again, it's all with that incentive of educating. And so, if I'm going to just lecture on the fundamentals of the marketplace, they may not come to the sales meeting. But if I'm giving away $100 and I'm doing a Jeopardy game that's challenging them to make sure that they understand how to grow themselves professionally, and it's a game changer. And I know I have always sought outside mentors ever since the moment I got in the industry.
That's huge.
It's huge.
And to be willing to be one.
Right. And so I have a coach every week who's checking in, making sure I'm accountable to what I say I'm going to do, and I therefore expect the same from my team. Yeah. And so that's what's huge is I don't ask them to do anything that I am not or have not done myself. Yeah. And so just that support, and also I'm huge on getting outside of our marketplace, because again, you don't want to become complacent and go, oh, I did really well. Go outside the marketplace, and you'll meet rock stars who are knocking it out of the park, and it really keeps you humble and keeps you hungry. Mm-hmm. So it's critically important we've got with all the various divisions we have, from the investment side, the property management side, our Spokane office, our Coeur d'Alene office, our Sandpoint office, we've got 52 folks working for us. So you've got to keep challenging them and keeping them hungry and giving them tools and inspiring them, or that's the leadership piece that I thrive on. Mm-hmm. Again, it's an opportunity.
I think everyone can learn to do it in time, and for some it obviously comes easier than others. But one of the things I didn't really, I wouldn't have thought this until someone brought it up, is just that ability to create a vision. Mm-hmm. So whether we're talking earlier about creating targets and hitting targets, but it was actually I think it was the night we were hanging out on Jake and Jamie's deck last year.
Oh yeah.
We were talking, but something like, you think up the weirdest stuff, right? I'm paraphrasing here.
Yep.
Well, why are you doing this? And we're talking about, I happen to be talking about a place in a different city, and I'm like, when I think about it, it's not about whether I do or don't ever want to live someplace or have a home somewhere or have a business.
Right.
But for me, it becomes a mental exercise of if I did that, what would it take to do it? What would I have to become? How would I operate my personal and professional lives if that ever happened? And to me, there's just tremendous value in, and that's where a lot of actually what we're putting into a place now came from is, I have to get better at this, and this. Mm-hmm. It isn't just staying in your comfortable bubble when you're talking about getting out of that marketplace.
So important.
And again, most of these things never happen.
Yeah, right.
But they force the conversation, they force the thought.
Yep.
And then when you're getting into that mindset, which I really, I'm a vision board guy.
Yep.
That's big. Written goals, huge. speaking things into existence.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, whether you believe in some magic potion of the secret or the answers component to it, or you just believe in accountability and living up to, hey, I'm going to said this thing, so I'm going to do it, and just the work ethic grind. I mean, there's kind of these two sides to this camp. I all I know is that it works.
Yes.
Talking about challenging and personal development, you mentioned podcasts earlier, books, health. What are some of the things you do, habits, morning routines, nighttime routines? So walk us through some of your routines, your tips for success.
It's getting that workout in early. Again,
You're a morning workout person. Let's start there.
You have to do something to get moving. Affirmations every morning, a couple minutes of just silent meditation. We actually do that as a family. It's really cute. We have these little meditation pillows, and we bring them into our daughter's room and sit down and kind of do this little family time. And it's just become our little tradition, and it's cute. Our daughter's 15 months, and she'll go grab it if we didn't do it and bring it to us. So it's just having that few moments of reflection. My husband is a huge supporter, and always his favorite saying is, "We'll never be this young." And it's kind of the stop and smell the roses of, I'll come home and I'll be unwinding or thinking about the day. And he says, "Don't fret it. Let's go for a walk. We'll never be this young again." And so it's having those moments where you can reflect, you can come together on your purpose of why you're doing this. Because again, it's not that momentum of more and more and more. It's what is this for? So, and I know you always, you go through kind of the why with all your clients. And that's so critically important as you're building your business of what are you doing this for? Are you doing this just to build something? Are you doing it for the next generation, or to exemplify for your children what you are capable of, or to create that long-term lasting business?
I think a lot of people would listen to either one of us talk about dreams and visions and meditation pillows. Maybe even younger Tim would have said this and that's silly.
Yeah.
I think they're, younger me, any of these things, they're dead wrong. And when we do walk through it with clients, I'm like, when you see people with undefined goals, there's always, we talk about a sense of urgency, and I think that's the healthy approach. The unhealthy side is anxiety.
Yes. Well said.
You don't know what you're mapping toward.
Right.
You won't know when you hit it. Right. And the other notion around that, to Justin's point around we'll never be this young again, is you're not going to spend 20 years being one type of person to hit this theoretical goal and then magically become a different person when you do. Right. It's appreciating the journey. It's hard. It's hard. Always the grind and the struggle, but that is that. But I just, we're doing this, and to that point, it's like, hey, I mean, every moment's to be cherished, but don't trade away. Don't trade away time. And I've been as guilty as that as anyone. I'm trying to get a lot better. Wife and kids have certainly brought a lot more of that into focus, because when it was just me, I was willing to give a lot more of that away than when it was time with other people. Maybe we touched on this. Are there something? It is a unique time. You can have this be more national in scope. You can have it obviously be specific to Spokane. Maybe with the tips, that obviously would probably apply to wherever people live. But it is an interesting market. People are fretting home sales, and yet the demographics are the demographics. Unless we're going to have the all-time largest population of homeless people that our country's ever seen, people are going to need homes. Yes. So everyone I trust is very optimistic about the market, right? Just because there's people that need places, right? But one of the challenges, and perhaps to the degree people see bad data, there's mixed data on homes, there's just not enough houses. It's a big challenge, right? And so people interpret that as, home sales are down like it's 2008 because there's no demand. It's not a demand issue, it's a supply issue. It is absolutely. That's about all I know of your business, but am I close? You're so close. You're so close. Well, if you look at it, I mean, you go back to 04, 05, 06, you had a pickup truck. You'd go to a bank and say, "I'm a home builder. Can I go build 20 homes?" And they'd say, 20? How about 30? I mean, it was crazy what the fundamentals of the markets were back then. So you had more home builders who weren't seasoned or experienced. Now, just the credentials to get into the market are so crazy. Banks are unwilling to lend to people without a staggering resume of expertise. Plus, developers aren't developing land like they used to because, again, money is not as easy. You then
then have
which is a good thing from a
very,
fundamental. It might
very
slow
good.
some things down, but
Yes.
it speaks to. It's one of the things we've talked about, even with respect to the economy as a whole, balance sheets as a whole. Contrary to what a lot of the headlines look like, things aren't as crazy as they were in 08 by any stretch of the imagination. You don't have the silly money floating around. There's pockets here or there, a car loan here, a student loan there, but on the whole, people learned a lot of lessons that are still in play from 08.
Very much so. And I still remember an economist joking back in 2008. He says, if only the millennials would buy a house, this would all be solved. Well, the millennials were 16. You know, that was a little impractical.
And they are now.
Yeah, they're now coming of age,
They
and
really are.
they're 43% of the market right now. So they are entering the market in mass numbers. The only difference is they are a little bit more cautious in their decision because their parents said buying a house is the best investment ever. And they say, no, it's not. What happened to your investment when your house dropped in value 25% and you were underwater and or lost it? So it's just a different mentality. Still, the fundamentals are completely different than what they were 10 years ago, but it's refreshing to see. But we are running into a housing shortage, and that's why I think for our area we will fare well, specifically because I mean you can get a great house in our area for $300,000, a really nice property, and that is not the case for all markets.
What would you tell the buyer who's growing impatient because they don't have the thing they want?
Yeah, it's adjusting expectations and or working with somebody who knows opportunities for off-market deals. So we've changed some strategies.
Yeah, I think that's probably something a lot of people don't understand, that not everything that's available isn't listed.
So a lot of it is just understanding who, again, like we talked about, knowing people who have given a signal that they may be willing to move. So understanding the neighborhoods, understanding the players in the neighborhood, and having those conversations with people and connecting the dots. And so that's something that an app or a tech company can't do, is give you those tips of potential opportunities of, for instance, I've had some fantastic opportunities to connect a buyer and a seller before it even hits the marketplace. And again, that's a result of a need in this market of people being frustrated with bidding wars. So, again, headlines today, bidding wars are down a little bit, and we're seeing that as well. So there's always going to be a challenge in the marketplace. The most important thing is to find somebody who understands what the challenge is and is already 10 steps ahead of it, assuring that they're prepared for whatever that challenge is. I remember in 08, too much inventory. Now, too little. So there's always going to be something. It's working with somebody who understands those fundamentals and can walk you through it step by step based on what your needs are.
Well, I want to ask one more thing. Maybe we've touched on it. This is a new wrinkle for pulling back the curtain. What is the single? What is the one change you've made in the last, we'll call it, year, that you would at least recommend people consider? For me, it was getting my phone out of my bedroom. That's
a good one.
I'm sleeping better.
I would say it's the workout routine. I think for me, it was if you are spent, in
terms of having a dedicated time or moving into the mornings or both?
A dedicated time and making sure I did it every single day. So for me, there's that almost always giving. And if your cup isn't full, you can't give to others. And so you almost get a little impatient or don't quite have the same response mechanism if you haven't filled your cup for the day. And so for us, it was the morning routine and getting that workout in first thing before Ava wakes up, and really being strategic on saying, I can't go out and be amazing to others if I'm feeling out of balance before I begin.
I'm going to change my answer to I've been doing the morning routine. You and I obviously both become Pelotonians.
Yes.
But I think the morning workout, I started a number of years back, but I've morphed it into, I used to just lift in the morning. I try to run anklet, so then I got the bike. Having that cathartic sweat right in the morning. For me, I get two things out of morning workout routines, and I know there's all sorts of, for one thing, and again, I'm always big on those, these contradictory truths. On the one hand, it's always humbling because there's always a part of me that wants to quit or not do it every morning.
Right.
And so I realize, again, just how moral, flawed, weak I can be.
Mm-hmm.
By the same token, then I force myself to do it. And it has gotten easier, a little easier over time. And then you feel like a world beater, right?
Right.
And so you head out into this world, I think, with a healthy mindset of a certain degree of humility, knowing you're going through the same struggles and challenges and having the same weaknesses as everyone else.
Yep.
And yet the confidence of knowing that it can be overcome.
Right.
It's an amazing way to start your day within the first 60 minutes.
Well, and I think it was Jerry Seinfeld who had the theory of don't break the chain. You know, and so it's his mindset was always right every day. And so he'd get this big poster board out and mark off every day that he did it. And as long you get so motivated when you know, look at what I've accomplished, and it's breaking that chain once, and then you're back to square one. So it is just every day, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or a 90-minute ride, or, you know, just doing some movement or yoga, it is every day. And if you get out of that routine, you'll feel off balance, and it'll catch you off by surprise.
Yeah, I think whether to this point, and whether it's a workout, a comedic routine for Seinfeld,
right.
The next idea to take, you know, prime real estate or 10 capital to another level is you don't know what that day is going to be.
Yes.
But you've got to start. And I think, and again, I've been, well, I won't work out today. Tomorrow I'll really get after it. Right?
Never happens.
You get in, you do the workout, or you sit down to have that dedicated time to think. And a lot of times it's just okay. Right. But then every now and then there is that breakthrough or that phenomenal workout or whatever the case may be. But I love that. Break the chain. Don't break the chain.
Don't break the chain.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. This was wonderful. So appreciate
it. For joining. I guess we have more than four people listening, so that's exciting.
Yeah,
a few hundred. So that's cool. Thanks for joining. We'll see you soon.